Diablito, ¿estás ahí, Diablito?
Hola, hola.
Ah, ¿dónde estás?
Estoy trabajando desde casa hoy.
¿Y cómo le vas a hacer para manejar la consola?
Pues la patrona me conectó a distancia.
¿Eso se puede?
Yo pude.
Bueno, entonces si lo tienes resuelto, ¿te late que saludemos a nuestro público?
Bienvenidos sean todos ustedes a Cómo, qué, su podcast favorito de contenido friki, en el que este muchachón platica con profesionales que sí son muy buenos de la industria creativa. Yo soy el Diablito Balear, pero me pueden llamar Bali.
Y yo soy Ino, y en esta ocasión nos vestimos de manteles largos, porque platiqué con un señorón de la industria animada de Hollywood y el mundo, el señor Tim Johnson, quien es responsable de que hace muchos años conociéramos cómo se ve Homero Simpson en CGI, en 3D.
¿Tú dices el cortito que se animó por computadora en 3D de la casita del horror? ¡Guau!
Ese mero. Y el señor Johnson también dirigió Hormiguitaz, Ants, Simbad, Home de Dreamworks, por decir algunos. Actualmente sigue trabajando en proyectos animados y bueno, y creando siempre, ¿no? Muchas cosas.
¿Y no te dio pena platicar con un señor de su talla y que tú no has hecho nada?
La verdad es que sí me emocionó bastante la charla, pero no es la primera vez que platicamos.
¿No?
No, fíjate, lo conocí en 2015-2016 en un festival de animación que se hacía aquí en la Ciudad de México, que se llamaba Creativa Fest. En varias ediciones del festival lo pude conocer a él y a varios otros profesionales de la industria, ¿no? No voy a decir nombres, pero sí varios con los que pude platicar y hacer migas ahí. Era un buen festival ese. Ahí platicamos un ratito en lo que era el área VIP. Mira, te paso la foto para que la pongas a cuadro.
A ver. ¡Oh! Mira, sí es cierto, ahí están.
Para que no digas que soy puro pájaro nalgón.
¿Qué?
Nada. Decía que mejor te suscribas al canal de YouTube o al Spotify para que constantemente te muestren contenido similar a este que hacemos acá, o que te notifiquen cuando hay un episodio nuevo del podcast, ¿verdad? Y lo digo porque continuamente estoy platicando o charlando con colegas de la industria, ¿no? De la industria creativa, que pueden y tienen a bien, ¿no? Compartir con nosotros su experiencia. Así es que más vale que te suscribas, Diablito.
Yo ya estoy suscrito, pero también lo que deberían hacer es seguirnos en Instagram, Twitter y TikTok, en donde yo soy la nueva estrella del canal, @como qué.
Ya ni se llama Twitter y ni eres la estrella, ¿eh?
Qué feo eso de que ya sea una X toda horrible, ¿no?
Es que ya ves que el señor Musk quiso aplicar una estrategia de marketing en la que ante la competencia fuerte hay que renovarse, ¿no? Y él la aplicó de una manera que yo creo que le está saliendo un poquito contraproducente, ¿no?
A mí ni me gusta esa red social. Yo estoy para que me vean en Instagram como @diablitobali.
Muy bien. Y ya hecho tu comercial, y ya antes de pasar a la charla, permíteme nada más recordarle a todos que la charla está en inglés, para que paren oreja y no se pierdan nada. ¿Te parece si iniciamos el podcast?
¡Sí! ¡Arrancamos!
Okay, now, Mr. Tim Johnson, sir, it's such an honor to have you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Fernando. It's really fun to join you.
It's been some years since we met, and I remember talking to you about how much I liked Home, and I'll get to that in a few minutes, but I'd like to start from the beginning now. If I'm correct, you started producing shorts and then even directing some indie projects before co-founding a little animation studio called Character Animation Group in the late 80s.
That's about right. Yeah, you know, I when I was in school, I was studying, of all things, literature and physics. Now, as crazy as that sounds, that ended up being the perfect background for doing computer animation, because literature gave me the storytelling and physics gave me a little bit less fear of all the technology. But I walked out of my college with a portfolio and 2 short films and immediately began doing hand-drawn television commercials in my hometown of Chicago. Gradually worked my way into computer animation, found my way out to California in, that would have been 88, and started the character group at Pacific Data Images. And then, of course, that grew to attract Dreamworks' attention, led to Ants, and I was with that phenomenal studio for a good 25 years.
Yeah. What was your vision back then? Why did you want an animation studio of your own?
Well, I had my own in Chicago, but when we formed the character group, it was under the umbrella of PDI. So the great part is you still had bosses doing the business, boring banking stuff, while my partner Rex Grignon and I could concentrate on getting the tools and the skills, which was, in the early days of CG, both of them were rare. The tools to do good computer character animation were really early, and the kind of people that computer animation was attracting at first were, I call them logo pilots. Everything was a flying logo. But actually very quickly, you could do profound and beautiful things with a computer. And we saw more and more great character animation talent arrive and join PDI and join this character group.
Yeah, I mean, I can relate to founding a studio and the vision of wanting to do something more, something different, because I started working in animation by co-founding a small studio here in Mexico City years ago. And that's what I wanted. Was that something in your mind, creating different stories or something like that?
Yeah, I'm sort of a storytelling fanatic. Like I'm just fascinated by how a book or a movie can make your whole personality kind of disappear and you just become somebody else. Like I think we've all that experience of like sitting in a movie and you realize that when the movie's over that you really have to go to the bathroom, but you were so lost in the movie you forgot your own body. And I wanted to tell those kind of stories that were so emotional and entertaining that you lost yourself in them. And the question early on was, could CG even do that? It seems obvious now that we've had a couple of decades of beautiful productions from all these different studios. But when I started to write scripts and treatments for feature films in the middle 80s, in the early 80s, a lot of people would say, but would anybody watch a CG movie? Would it make their eyes bleed? Like they were afraid of that technology not being able to sustain an hour and a half of storytelling. But I definitely had my vision. I just really felt like not only is storytelling phenomenally the greatest art form, but CG, this brand new art form, could just do wonderful things with it.
Yeah, I know the feeling, because, well, every time we have something new, speaking about technology or talking about technology, people just doubt, and sometimes we are afraid, right? So, yeah, but fortunately, it came out just right.
Yeah. Well, for that fear is a good feeling, right? Like I think for an artist, you need to sort of walk towards the fear a little bit in order to find those boundaries and to create something that wakes an audience up. It's awfully easy to follow a template and do a very boring story nowadays, but it's increasingly challenging to do something fresh and honest and wake an audience up.
Yeah, and speaking about freshness, when you started with DreamWorks, I mean, you started with Ants, the first project of DreamWorks Animation Studio with Katzenberg. How was it that you were picked to work in the first of them all?
Well, at that point, we had pitched a script I had written that was very similar in its structure and story to Ants. So we met Jeffrey Katzenberg. DreamWorks had just begun as a studio, and we pitched this idea for a feature. And he said, I like your sensibility, but I have something I'm already working on that you might like that feels like similar. And so I read the script and I loved it. And he basically sort of turned to me and went, well, it's yours to lose. You're the director until you screw up. And so I had directed TV commercials. I had directed, the CG portion of a really fun Simpsons episode.
Yeah.
But to step into the chair of a feature film was an incredible leap. And I have to say, Jeffrey, believing in me and believing in my studio and in my partner, Eric Darnell, and then mentoring me. I mean, I learned so much, and I continued to throughout the over 25 years I worked with Jeffrey. I just was always at the school of Jeffrey Katzenberg and his very sensible but deeply probing instincts about story. So it was mine to lose, and somehow or another I didn't lose it, and went on to finish Ants and several other films for Katzenberg.
Yeah. You mentioned this CGI part of The Simpsons. It's a classic, right? When Homer turns into this. Yeah, it is so. I gotta say, it's a beautiful part of The Simpsons, a beautiful short for The Simpsons that we all love and miss that freshness within the series. And when we all watched that on TV, it was amazing how well it was achieved. I mean,
oh, thanks, Fernando. I was so amazed at being in the writers' room with the Simpsons writers. It was actually probably the best preparation to directing a feature, because you learned right away by watching how the Simpsons craft their show that every idea is respected, everybody has a voice, and the director and the lead writer or producer, they can always say no, but they can't say yes to an idea they've never heard. And so I learned right there, just check your ego at the door, let everybody, throw the craziest of ideas out there. And sometimes it's the craziest that is the thing that is the best. And so Simpsons was not only a joy as a fan of the show, but it was a joy to work on because everybody was so collaborative. And I took everything I learned there, was able to really apply it to the rest of my career.
I gotta say, I mean, I cannot talk much about the project I worked on, a video game project I worked on, but it kind of has to do something with that. And I have to say, the people in charge took that 3D short as a good reference for the project I was working on. It was something. I mean, again, we all loved it, and when I speak to my colleagues and friends about The Simpsons, because pretty much everybody at my age love The Simpsons.
Yeah, raised on it.
Yeah, we all talk about that. It must feel, I mean, something special for you to have done that. For that, it's going to pass on for generations. It's a classic moment.
It was definitely a benchmark, and thank you so much for singing its praises. But I'm pleased to say you aren't the only one. I've consistently met folks that really enjoyed all of the clever writing that we were able to put into visuals, all the inside jokes about CG. I still quote Homer all the time on shows and go, "This place looks expensive," because just anytime you storyboard something just too complicated, that line comes to mind.
Yeah, we all have classic Simpsons quotes, right?
Yep.
And about Ants, back with Ants, I gotta say I really enjoyed it because it was different. It was refreshing to what we were from what we had been seeing in theaters and TV. Different characters, different pacing, different textures, different rendering. The audience was divided, and Disney, we all felt it, began to have a counterpart. Did you guys at Dreamworks felt it that way? Like there were two sides of this, like Disney versus Dreamworks inside the studio?
It's funny, a little bit, but in general, you're so inside your own bubble, not just the Dreamworks bubble, but your own show's bubble. And you're so every day trying to, come up with the clever, most emotional version of a character or a story or a scene or a line. And honestly, the sort of outside comment on a Dreamworks tone or a Disney tone, I don't think we spent too much time thinking about it. Now, maybe Jeffrey did, but it was just organic to folks that got together. It wasn't like got together and said, we need to be different than Disney. It was just the people who got together had a sensibility that turned out to just organically go in a different direction.
Okay, because here in Mexico, I mean, we don't have that many studios. I mean, animation, regardless, but we all think about what the other ones are doing. Besides, we are not having, I mean, that many productions a year, but we are all in constant friendly competition, I must say, about what the other ones are saying, and it's fun to see what the others are making. And the industry is so small that we all end up working in those studios as well. So we are
Yeah.
like insiders, and that's a fun part of this. I have to say, I just wanted to know if
I think it's the same in Los Angeles, I think. Even though this is a much bigger industry, maybe than in Mexico City, Los Angeles, it still is, everybody seems to know everybody. And I definitely feel, what's the phrase? A rising tide floats all boats. When people see a good animated movie, they just want to see more good animation. So I always felt that when Disney or Pixar made a great movie, I mean, I was jealous, but I was never begrudging. I always thought that it's motivating to me and my partners, and it just helps the industry. It just, anytime a great animated film came out, I just wanted to get back to my own films and do a better job. So, and I always knew enough people who worked on those that I was proud and excited and happy for them. So it was less about jealousy. It was more about, we're all kind of on the same animation team. It sounds like kind of the same spirit you've got amongst the companies in Mexico City.
Yeah. We are all inspired by the others' work, and we always want to do better, and we always share. I mean, you look at the parties at the festivals, and we are all friends, and we all share, and it's great. We have formed like a brotherhood of animators and artists here, and it's good. It's
That's
good.
fun. Back in my Chicago days, it was such a small community in Chicago. I remember when Who Framed Roger Rabbit opened, and the first screening was Friday at 10 a.m. And everybody at my little studio left to go see the movie, and we got in line, and literally every animator in Chicago had left work at 10 in the morning to see Who Framed Roger Rabbit. The whole small community, like 100 of us, were the entire first audience for that film.
It was like a party, I think.
Oh, yeah. And people rooted and hollered and raved and loved the movie. It's still like, obviously an enormous, influential classic, right? But I think that just speaks to both, that was 30 years ago. And today, the animation community, we're artists first, and we're excited to see quality work.
Yeah. And well, quality work like the one you had done in Dreamworks. It was a lovely career you had inside that studio. I must say, you worked on Simbad, Over the Hedge, Kung Fu Panda Holiday, Home, of course, How to Train Your Dragon, Homecoming, and much more. What's the most valuable piece of knowledge you got from working on all these projects? What would you say it is?
That's a really tough question. I don't know how to pick the best. So let me ramble, and I might give you one or two answers. The first most valuable thing is try things fast and early, because the process of animation is you storyboard and you cut it together. You record just voices amongst the crew. And my experience is that even a sloppily stick figure storyboard with bad acting from you and your friends, cut in an hour and a half on an Avid, it still gives you enough to know, is that going to work or not? So one of the biggest lessons I've learned across all of the storytelling is, if you think an idea might work, scramble, work really quickly, and get a very rough version together. Because the joy of that process in animation is you'll learn so much by even a very quick, rough assembly. And it gives you, as opposed to spending lots of time and money and trying to make everything perfect, it gives you, the permission to make mistakes. try something. And I would say even the things that fell flat on its face, we learned so much from why it didn't work that the next version was so much better. So maybe one of the biggest things I learned is use the tools of animation storytelling, storyboarding and quick edits and scratch dialogue to get ideas out there as fast as possible. The second thing I would say, having done short things like The Simpsons, which was only like a 7-minute component of the 3-part Halloween of Horror, or more recently in my career doing the holiday specials, which were 22 minutes of network television, you can, as an artist and a storyteller, you can kind of hold that whole story in your head and you sort of know where the problems are. But there's something about a 90-minute feature you just don't know until you watch it. So similar to my first point where you have to storyboard stuff and cut it, that also translates to throw the whole film up on reels as soon as possible, because you'll find stuff that you didn't think work beautifully, and stuff you were confident in actually doesn't mesh with the whole thing. So maybe that's a 2-part answer. Storyboard early and often, and then cut those things together into a full film as often as possible, because that's the only way you're really going to assess the rhythm and emotional connection of your big story.
Wow, that's nice knowledge. I mean, it's so practical for future projects of my own, actually. Which one was your favorite of all the movies or the feature films?
Like asking me to pick my favorite child, right? I would say it's hard to pass up the joy of working on Ants. To be directing Gene Hackman and Woody Allen and Christopher Walken and Sharon Stone, and I mean, it was just such an incredible cast, and the comedians involved. So just because that first experience, I learned so much that still has a enormous weight in my mind. But then on the other side of my career with Home, that was a book I was reading to my kids, and I got so emotionally wrapped up in the book. I think I told you when we met like 6 years ago that I stayed up late and finished the book after tucking the kids to bed.
Yep.
And so Home was another special one for me because I had to really fight for that one to get made. The Katzenberg had a genuine concern about the science fiction genre in animation. He felt it was a hat on a hat, that animation is already kind of a fantasy science fiction leap just because it looks so different. It's a fantasy. And he felt if you have too much exposition and you have to explain things like you do in the setup of science fiction, that it would just sink a film. It would never like get an audience involved. So even though he greenlit Home, he was super suspicious about whether it would work. And I had to fight the whole time to get that film made. And the very first scene in the movie was the last one we finished because we kept perfecting and tweaking how to get all the information we needed in that in the most entertaining, quick, and efficient way.
Of course. And I remember also talking about Dreamworks had these high budget or features that are like these main ones of them, and the low budget ones or the smaller ones, and that I felt that Home was one of those, but it was so emotional and so full of colors and rich in a matter of characters that I loved it so much. And how was it for you to work with a low budget production? And I'm quoting that because I mean,
it was still, by most people's measures, it was still pretty high, but definitely compared to Dreamworks, we were working under a little more, challenge. I would never tell like my bosses in the studio this, so hopefully they won't listen, but those limits can actually make you more creative. It's sort of a trope or a easy thing to say that like limits are your friend, but it does sort of make you assess everything to make sure you want it and need it and it belongs in the film. And by watching every penny, you're also watching every like entertaining component, and you don't take anything for granted. So I felt like working with the slight, downsized production for home ended up, I think, making us be just a little tighter in our storytelling and emotional impact. So it was a really great experience.
What do you enjoy the most, directing or producing?
Directing. There's if you're an animation fan, is there anything better than animation dailies? Every single day, as the director of film, I would walk into a room with 35 or 40 artists who practiced my favorite art form at a level of astonishing gift. And they were there to show their work for the very first time to me, the director. So it's literally like every day I'm at an animation premiere seeing the very first work, and it happens every single day. So directing is awesome. The responsibility is like directing an orchestra. You don't need to know how to play the violin, but you want to be able to create a space where the violinist does their best work. And I really loved the collaborative nature of my job was to be very clear about what we needed to do to make the story work, and then welcome all of these talents and ideas and let them have the space to do their job. And I loved that balancing act, helping people share a vision and then helping them do the best work they could.
Yeah, Jorge Gutierrez, the director of my Entre, he once advised, if you want to be a director, just direct, just do it. What would you say is the best way of getting started into directing?
Well, Jorge is absolutely right. And by the way, that guy's a genius and the most warm guy. I just adore him and his work. But he's right to an extent that it's always the challenge in almost any profession that in order to get the job, you have to have already done the job. And so with directing, anything you can do to prove that you are a storyteller or a leader is going to help you get that job. So making a short film, starting out with TV commercials or industrial work, anything that lets you say, I have led people and I've been responsible for the vision is going to work to your benefit to get your stories made. I also feel like the primary job of a director is a storyteller. And the more you learn about story structure, story craft, the easier it'll be to direct and to get the job of directing.
Do you sometimes miss animating when you direct?
Every single day. Yeah. My wife loved it when she was at home with the kids, and she would often make dinner, and I would come home and be lovely. She would have made dinner, but I always loved doing the dishes because there were days where I felt like I didn't do anything. Yeah. And so starting with a mess and ending up with something clean felt like I'd accomplished something. It is, don't get me wrong, it's super satisfying to help other creative people do their work. But there is a sense sometimes that you're on the outside looking in and you just want to create yourself. You just want to animate.
How do you manage to have a healthy personal life when working in this passionate way that you work?
Well, I do have to hand it to my wife. Jean Cunningham was a lighting supervisor on Ants. She worked on Jurassic Park up at ILM. And so I was gifted with and she's a painter now. And so I was gifted with a spouse that knew the job and the demands and was in every way as talented and ambitious as myself. So finding that partner that can understand the life balance demands of trying to get a feature film done. And the fact that the two of us got to work together on Ants was pretty special. But it's, the other thing about animation is it's a marathon, not a 100-meter dash. And you have to be careful that you don't burn out. And as a director, the hardest thing you have to do is, are you keeping something because you're afraid of changing it, or are you keeping it because it's great? And similarly, are you changing something because you're just sick of it, or are you changing it because there's a better idea? And I don't think you can judge those things unless you take the weekends off. In my case, it's play guitar and pinball and play with the kids and go, do things that refresh you creatively. And so that work-life balance is not just for the survival. It's also, I think, a core part of what makes creative people successful. You have to recharge in order for those batteries to work.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've been there. Every youngster I feel like has been, trying to make sure everybody gets that I am a good worker. I'm a professional. I can do stuff to prove yourself. I've been there, but you end up like so tired and so with so much on your hands. Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
hard, animation. I always tell animators, it's funny, I used to be famous at Dreamworks campus is gorgeous. It's this beautiful, sprawling campus full of gardens and a river with, koi in it. And yet you look at animators and they're slouched over their keyboard with their crooked hand on their mouse. And their job is to do motion, but they're barely moving at all. So I was famous at Dreamworks for telling people to do a lap, get out of the chair, walk once around the campus, and come back. And my argument, which I think everybody agreed, is you would be faster for taking a 5-minute break than if you just sat there and burned your way through it. So I think with animation, you can never underestimate the thinking, planning time of creation. And to do that away from the keyboard and mouse or the pencil and paper or the clay, I think it's phenomenally positive for animation, and you'll work less hours if you give yourself that time to walk, to think, to get.
Yeah, and that's great that you say it and that you think this way, because most of producers, and I mean, it's great that you directly produce, animate, because most of producers don't know that and don't think like that, and just want all the animators and the artists to be just stick to the computer, just working, and yeah, we all end up all burned out. But yeah, you as a producer have a lot of experience also, right? I mean, you have also well, DreamWorks with Kung Fu Panda 3, Kung Fu Panda 3, started a more serious collaboration system with their Chinese studio.
Yeah.
And the Abominable, then came Abominable, where you were an
Yeah.
executive producer. What was exactly the role you were doing there? I mean, in a film like that, working with Chinese people,
Well, that project went through so many different permutations. I mean, it began with Jill Colton directing it. Then I replaced her as a director, and then I stepped aside as I started to basically not be able to fulfill what the Chinese partners wanted from the film. It was a film that began as we wanted to be a very American movie, and then ended with all sorts of changes with China to be a very Chinese movie. And so it became easier for me to help Jill come back to her role and partner with her as a producer than it was to try to apply my American sensibility. And I think Jill, with some of the Chinese partners. So I ended up being a great interface between the two and trying to like have that balance of Western thinking and style in filmmaking, but also a Chinese vision and tone to it. I'm proud of the film. It's a beautiful movie, and I think Jill ultimately delivered a great emotional ride.
Yeah, it was a lovely movie. We all loved it home. It was so much fun. We all felt also that it was like a big Chinese commercial, but like Visit China with the map and
Yeah.
everything.
I'll be honest. When they started to want that sort of thing, I realized I was not the right filmmaker to do it. And so I, without any hesitancy, was able to step aside and let somebody who was happy to fulfill that kind of vision happen. So
Then an era ended, and you left DreamWorks Animation. but you are now producing live action films. What a challenge.
No, I'm not. I don't know. There might be some IMDb mistake. No, I'm still only in animation, man. I'm producing a couple different things, and I have a couple projects out there that are being developed. And I'm actually tomorrow morning pitching a brand new idea to Dreamworks, my friends at Dreamworks. So I've been tempted to go to the live action world, but nope, I'm still staying to animation.
I was going to ask about being doing that, and like Brad Bird with Mission Impossible and the challenge of jumping between ways. Yeah, but
No, I still feel like animation is the perfect filmmaking tool. Like I still feel like, and if I'm motivated, it's because I feel like we've only scratched the surface. Now we're 25 years since Ants came out this coming October, and yet I feel like the kind of stories that computer animation can tell, we've barely challenged the art form. So I really feel like the next 25 years of computer animation is going to be even more visually exciting, and the kind of stories that could only be told with the kind of tools and the talents that are now in CG. So now I'm a diehard animator. I'm going to stick with the art form.
yeah. Glad to hear you say that, because now that you mentioned that we are just scratching the surface, what do you think about the latest Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse movies?
It's really exciting. I mean, it really shows you that the level of creation that can happen visually, and that an audience will eat that up, will love it, and will follow the aggressive visual styles. It just opens up a window to more emotional storytelling, more dazzling storytelling. I think the worst thing to happen to CG movies is when they try to imitate exactly photoreal live action. I understand a role for that in live action special effects, but I don't understand the impulse to do that in a CG feature animated film. Why not create? And I think Spider-Man's a great example. The other example that I thought was at least visually beautiful was the winner of the Academy Award for Short Picture, The Boy, the Mole, the Horse. It was
Yeah.
it was
Beautiful.
a beautifully sort of hand-drawn meets CG style, and another example of how we don't have to settle for photorealism when we use computer tools.
Yeah, it was a beautiful short on Apple TV. Yeah. Beautiful short. I didn't like the lecturing in the story, but visually it was
Yeah.
stunning.
Yeah, I thought the story, just to be honest, I thought the story was kind of head scratching. It was such like kind of pablum that I turned down the sound and just enjoyed the visual because it was just oddly preachy. But
Yeah.
I was very excited for the art form to see that film get an audience, because I do feel like it's those unique looks that spell the future for computer animation.
Yeah, and the book also has beautiful illustrations.
Yeah, they were able to take. Actually, I don't know about you, but I love browsing kids' picture books. The amount of experimentation in illustration today is really exciting, and I hope more and more of the experimental work that happens in kids' picture books and illustrated books can make its way to influence what we do on the big screen for CG.
Yeah, a lot of great artists. You can tell by looking at their art that they love what they're doing and they enjoy that. And if we can translate that to animation, it would only bring awesome results.
And I think audiences are, I worry a little bit when I see a beautiful film like Pixar's Elemental fail to get the kind of box office numbers they want. But I think it speaks just a little bit to the, if this isn't, a weird phrase, traditional CG. I guess we've been around long enough now that there's
Yeah.
a look to computer generated work. And I wonder if a film like Elemental, it was dazzlingly beautiful, and yet it also kind of sat within the world of what we expect to see from CG at the same time that Spider-Man was breaking new visual boundaries. So it does make me feel that maybe audiences really are hungry for show me something new. Take me to a fantasy world I've never been to and never seen before.
Yeah. I mean, I guess same thing happened with DreamWorks latest, like the Kraken Jill Gilman. Yeah, I mean, it was a lovely movie, visually beautiful, but just didn't make it. Like
Yeah,
Disney,
and
big.
I wonder if it was just a little familiar. That film played a little young as well, I think, which is I still feel like animated films are the last of the genuine four quadrant movies. You know, moms, dads, grandma and grandpa, the boys and girls. Everybody can go to an anime film and see all the different layers in it. And when our animated films do well, I think it's because nobody is bored. Like nobody feels like it was condescending, and everybody sees something in it. So I'm excited when I see stories that have a little edge or comment or social awareness for the adult audience, but have, you know, classic motion-based slapstick humor for the kids, and combining those is still something our films, animated films, do better than anything.
Like Nimona. Have you watched Nimona on Netflix?
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, it
And that
looks
was
amazing.
it was done at a very modest budget.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell, but it's this story is so well, it's compelling. It's so well
Yeah.
compelled, and characters have so much attractiveness, and they are appealing. So
Yeah. Yeah. Storytelling is king, right? I mean, I think
yeah,
we'd all watch a film with stick figures if we cared for every moment about a vulnerable character, if we were just, you know, dying to know what happens next. And that's why, back to the earlier point, storyboards, even the roughest storyboards, if you cut rough storyboards together, but you're on the edge of your seat, you know you've got something.
yeah,
And it's so exciting to find that in its earliest form. And then you're just plussing it with every new color, with every new gesture of beautiful animation. It just fulfills its promise. But that promise can be there right from the start with a well-crafted scene.
yeah. So now you're still working in animation, fortunately, and you have a new project to pitch for DreamWorks. Uh, any other projects we can talk about from
I
you?
don't know what the challenge, of course, is everything has to be under such wraps. I've
Yeah,
got my fingers in four or five different animated projects. What I can't really pitch them to you. I'll say this though. What's been motivating to me as a storyteller is the fact that the whole world, 8 billion people, just had the same experience. The pandemic affected everybody. And I can't imagine, short of something horrible like a world war, and of course the pandemic was horrible and took so many lives and changed so many lives. But if there's a silver lining to the cloud, it's that we also had a shared experience, and so many people struggled with being alone or lonely or shut in, and to share that experience, to me, that's what artists do. They look at the world and say, what are we all experiencing that I can comment on, and I can share my version of that experience. So the
right.
stories that I've been drawn to are the ones that even indirectly, they have something to say about what it was like to suddenly not be able to see your mom and dad for months and months, and not be able to get together with your friends, or to feel scared about the future. And those were things every human on earth experienced. So
Yeah,
I'm really focusing on stories that people can say, yeah, that story right now is the right story.
yeah, I can tell because, well, it was such a harsh moment, and that would be a great project to work on.
I'm a
Really,
little surprised we're not seeing
that many.
more works that including in music, that have more reflection. I think it's hard when you're in the moment to have the distance to comment on it,
Yep.
but I feel pretty passionately that that's our job as artists. Like we should be reflecting our personal time and our personal experience. So we'll see if I can get one of these off the ground. I'm hoping it'll feel that relevant. So
Yeah, fingers crossed. So I like to ask to all my guests here, if you could talk to a young team back in 1995, 1996, and give him some advice, what would it be?
Well, first and foremost, the creative life is a life worth fighting for. Doing creative work, even creative work for hire, but especially when you get to do personal work, that's, I think, the reason we were put on this planet. To share with other people what's in our hearts and to do art to share it, especially storytelling art and visual art. I would encourage anybody that thinks they might want to do art either as a passion or as a living. You will never regret it. You'll have hard times, you'll have rent that's due, but you will always be experiencing moments of joy that I don't think any banker or real estate agent will ever experience.
Perhaps they do in their own way. Yeah, you're right. Let's get all our ideas out before the aliens take over the
planet. Yeah, exactly. Or before the world is 150 degrees and we're all in our underground caves. Yeah, no thanks. So, the world is changing quickly. The AI poses either a partnership or a threat to our creative world. The writers' strike and actors' strike in Los Angeles has me incredibly concerned about the economic reality of making a living as a creative person telling stories. But I tend to think that, especially when it comes to creativity, we're always going to solve the problem in creative ways. So I feel like it's a little scary now. It's like we all got in a boat and we left the familiar shore of network television and theatrical movies, and we're only halfway across this new ocean, and we can't see the shore we're going to yet. What does it mean to work in the world of streaming and with different audience expectations for a movie theater experience? We just don't know. But there's promising, exciting things going on when you see Spider-Man go out there and find a great audience.
Yeah, well, something like this happened back in 1980, I believe, when the VCRs came out. We had to adjust. Well, the producers and all the companies, big companies, had to adjust the contracts and the way things were made. So I believe we are in a similar stage now.
Yeah.
So
Fernando, my favorite art story along those lines is when photography started to have an impact in like 1865. People, you can go back and find articles where people said, no one's ever going to paint or draw again. But instead, I think what happened is painting and drawing suddenly realized, oh, we don't have to do realism. We can go where no photograph could ever go. And painting exploded into new areas of impressionism and abstract. And so in some ways, photography didn't kill the painting at all. It energized it. I'm hoping AI is the same thing. We don't know yet what it'll do, but I have faith that it will make incredibly interesting human creativity go to new places.
Yeah, I have faith too. I mean, it's new. It doesn't have to be harmful. It can be helpful. We just have to regulate it so it doesn't harm us. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I don't worry about AI harming us as much as I worry about businessmen harming us.
Right.
But I think there's. I've been using some of the AI image generating as part of my own brainstorming process. The thing I miss about Dreamworks was I could have that working alone time in an office with a closed door. But then if I left that room, I was surrounded by hundreds of brilliant creative artists to take my idea and improve it. And so working alone in the home office, I have been able to get a certain kind of new energy out of just kind of letting AI be a partner to challenge some of my expectations and to make me get outside of my own box of thinking. So I've already experienced the upside of it, which is it's been a helpful way to challenge my own preconceptions on my own development ideas.
Yeah, as a tool, it can be, like you say, so helpful. Let's just hope the best of this, and let's just hope it doesn't last that much. This strike.
Well, the strike is pretty scary and might last for a bit, but I think all of us need to be rooting for them on multiple fronts, and the AI in particular, making sure that it is not a cheat to a business end and simply becomes a partner to a creative end.
Yeah. Yeah, we all root for the best down here. I mean,
Yeah,
this affects everybody from around the United States and the industry. I
yeah,
mean, we all get jobs. I mean, I work with studios in Los Angeles, in New York now, so it affects me, of course. Friends of mine that work in Canada also are affected. People in India, people in
yeah.
China, Philippines, we are all affected. So we are just rooting for the best.
Tell me a little bit about what's exciting that's happening in Mexico in animation these days. Have you seen interesting work or artists, or should I be looking at something that you think is kind of cool these days out of Mexico?
Well, the best thing about Mexico industry is that we are all into uh, the death and scary stuff. So there are lots of movies about legends here. So that recently one came out in which was a 2D layout supervisor and storyboard artist as well. So the legend of the Chaneques, it's
All
called.
right. I'm
It's
gonna write it down.
yeah, legend, la leyenda in Spanish, the legend of the Chaneques. Chaneques with CH, QUES, Chaneques. And
Cool.
yeah, but we are all producing there every time, well, every year we know about a new studio, even if it's small. So we are growing up as an industry. We have the Cinema Fantasma, like Ghostly Cinema, that's producing a stop motion animated series called Frankelda, like Frankenstein, Frankelda. I believe it's in HBO Max. Also, we have Vilanus, that's from also HBO, and it's now on HBO Max in the US. So, yeah, we're producing a lot of new stuff. And regarding features, we like, this latest pandemic situation just affected us
Yeah.
really hard. So for instance, this Chaneques movie, it was supposed to come out in 2020. So
Oh,
just
wow.
yeah. So we are a bit lagged there, but we are working on creating more stuff and regaining this pacing we had producing stuff. We have this festival coming this September called Pixelatl. It's the biggest animation festival in Latin America, and yeah, I'm so excited for it. I don't know if I can make it, but every year something great happens there, and lots of amazing people has been there. Like Jorge, like Alex Hirsch, like I mean, I don't know, Kim Jung Ji was there. I mean, lots of people have visited us, and yeah, lots of stuff going on. And there are a lot of indie producers producing now that we have the technology. We can produce our own stuff at home. So, for instance, I'm working some animated shorts myself
Awesome.
and planning on some series and making our way up from here.
Good luck on a short, Fernando. I don't think there's anything better than an animated short. It's my favorite thing at the end of every year as a member of the Academy to watch the 80 to 100 short films, and I watch every one of them. It takes a good couple weeks to watch a few every night, but it it is so thrilling to see the level of experimentation and discovery that consistently happens in the animated shorts. And sometimes the storytelling, like with the one that won last year, may not be my favorite story, but consistently the visuals tend to push the art form way harder than any studio or feature film has pushed. So I'm excited to think you're working on your own. I hope you find the time and energy and money to get it all done. So
It's been a slow process, but
yeah. Yeah,
but
it's hard
yeah,
to,
yeah.
yeah, you got to pay the rent and then find the time and energy to somehow, 9 o'clock at night get some artwork done. That's hard.
Yeah, but it's exciting, as you know. It's exciting to draw and create characters and to sit down and draw the story and have the story beats and the beat boards and everything working together. That's so exciting and so fulfilling, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So
I always think there's a time as a filmmaker where you cross this border and suddenly, instead of you imposing your ideas on the film, it's like the film starts to talk to you and tell you what it needs. that's the most exciting time, when you've storyboarded something and then you make a few changes, and then all of a sudden you're not wondering what will happen next. You just know, because the film needs something and it's clear. And then the film gets a life of its own. I hope you find that with your projects and you get that kind of energy. So
yeah, I have 3 shorts right now that I have written, and I wanted to produce them all. Then I wrote another one, and oh my God, I have to produce this one first. And then by writing that, this one's growing up so much. It was 2 pages long. Now it's 10. What the hell?
Oh.
Yeah. But then I'm just working on that, and that's exciting. That's exciting. Exciting is the word.
Yeah.
Working on this, it's exciting.
Yeah, I nothing gets me up in the morning more than that idea that is still growing. Like when you feel, I used to end every day on Home with a very quick talk with the producer and the head of story, and I always ask the same question: is, did the film get better today? And the good news is 99 times out of 100, everyone went, yes, the film got better today. We did work that discovered new things and pushed the boundaries, and nothing that would, you could go home and relax if you went, the film got better today.
You know what happens a lot to me? Whenever I get to bed, I keep on thinking about whatever, everything, about the podcast, about the reviews I have to say, to write, about what I'm going to say, how I'm going to call them, about these short films. Okay, so now I have this idea. Or every time when I get to go to the gym, when I am at the, making some cardio, doing some cardio, I'm thinking about, okay, the story must go like this. No, but it has to go like that. No, but what do I want to say here? And I'm always like that, especially when I'm going to bed. I mean, it takes me like 1 or 2 extra hours.
You and me both. Yeah, I think insomnia is the curse of the creative mind. Although Listen, I, like anybody, there's times where I just crave sleep, but honestly, I hate sleep. I hate the idea that I have to stop and be unconscious for a third of my life. Like if I had any superpower, it'd be, I would never need sleep. I would feel refreshed at the snap of the fingers. And because I'm like you, I can't just turn it off. And even worse, sometimes my best ideas do happen. I've learned to keep a pad of paper near the bed because I want to make sure I write down stuff if I'm actually solving some problems. It's hard because you have to have the sleep, but it's too hard to turn off the brain.
Yeah, and some of the best ideas come out either at night or on the toilet.
Yep. Wherever whenever you're not near a piece of paper, that's when it'll happen.
Yeah, on the bus, on the subway.
Yeah. Yeah. A shower, wherever it's the least convenient, that's where the most amazing idea is going to slip through your fingers if you can't write it down. So
yeah, voice notes are amazing on the cell phone.
They're our friend. Yep.
Yeah, that'll do it. Well, Mr. Tim Johnson, sir, it has been a blast talking to you. Really, really, really a pleasure. I enjoyed this a lot.
I did too, Fernando. It's always great to find the brotherhood and sisterhood of animation is international. It's an art form that is only for the passionate. Yeah,
it is. So if you are ever here in Mexico, give me a call. You have a friend here, you have a place to stay, to crash in, we can always go get some enchiladas.
Be careful what you wish. I love Mexico City, so I'll come just for the food. So
yeah, whenever you want, we can go to Acapulco, to Mérida, wherever you want, man. Wherever you want. We can go travel, visit, and have a good time. And I can take you to all the Mexican studios so you can know people as well.
All right. Sign me up.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Fernando. Be well. Keep in touch.
You too. Ustedes disculparán las fallas de origen, pero es que uno no siempre, uno no puede controlar cómo se va a comportar la internet, ¿verdad? Eso y que mis fuentes estaban mal, específicamente IMDb.
Es que no revisas antes, ¿ya ves?
Sí reviso, solo que hay veces en que cómo rectifican la información, a ver.
Ay, de veras contigo, de veras. Y luego también te pones a hacer unboxings de controles sin mí para darles el visto bueno.
Ya viste el video que subí, ¿verdad?
Sí, pero debo decir que hubiera estado mejor si yo hubiese participado. ¿Por qué no me invitaste a jugar? A ver. Es porque me tienes miedo, yo lo sé. Tienes miedo de perder.
Para el que sigue me ayudas, ¿cómo ves?
A ver si así ya tienes más vistas.
Bueno amigos, eso fue todo por nuestra cuenta. Nos estamos despidiendo no sin antes recordarles de la tienda en línea que tenemos del canal, en donde pueden comprar playeritas como esta, ¿verdad? Pueden comprar hoodies, pueden comprar tazas, stickers, mucha más merch del canal. Y como siempre les voy a dejar la liga en la descripción de este episodio. Ya hay diseños del diablito, por lo menos hay uno que está padre, que es la carta de la lotería ahí con el diablito. Va a haber más pronto, en cuanto tenga tiempo voy a ir subiendo más y más y más y más, para que todos podamos vestir muy avant-garde.
Sí, cada vez hay más cosas padres ahí.
Nosotros fuimos trabajando desde casa el Diablito Bali
Y el niño divino. Adiós, chao, chao, sayonara, bye, besito, bye bye. ¡Mua!
Hasta siempre y adelante.